If you are an athlete that just had surgery or is about to get surgery, this is the video for you. My name is Emily. I'm a sports dietitian. I work with injured athletes through my private practice, the Injury RD, and I help you guys figure out how to eat, especially if you just had surgery. There's probably some things going on that make that kind of hard right now. And I help athletes feel more comfortable in their body during such a weird time. In this video, we are going to figure out how to take the worry of food off your plate, and I'm going to give you some specific examples of what you should put on your plate. Let me first tell you why eating is so important right now, because especially if you're on painkillers, you probably don't have an appetite. You probably don't want to move around and bother to get up to get to the kitchen. Your stomach might feel a little bit weird. Maybe you're a little constipated, or you've got some stomach stuff going on that you're like, I just don't want to think about it. Or maybe it's a little bit mental, and because you're not at practice, because you're not moving the way that you normally move, you don't want to eat the way that you normally eat. But let me very clearly explain to you, you must eat. Okay? Right now, your body has three main goals. One, we're physically rebuilding something. You basically have a construction site in your knee or your elbow or shoulder or wherever that surgery was. We have to provide tools to build what we want to build. And guess what? Right now, that is food. We also, since we're not moving around and we're not getting this build signal to our muscle that comes from playing sports and lifting weights and all that stuff, we have to try to tell our muscle, like, hey, we still want to keep you around. We don't want to shrink into a little chicken leg or whatever. And that signal right now is going to come from food. And then also, as I'm sure you're very well aware because you can feel it, there's some major swelling going on. There's some major inflammation going on, and food can really help manage that for us a little bit. So I want you to think of your injury site like a construction site, right? We have something that we are physically working to rebuild, and we need energy for that construction site. We need calories for that. So just because you're not moving around doesn't mean that your body is not working really hard right now. We have our construction site, and then it's also important what we send to it. The one that's really obvious is you have your protein, and protein is the building blocks, and we want protein to act as the building blocks. We want it to be the bricks. We want it to be the material. But we also need some workers. We need things to put that material in place, and that's going to come from your carbohydrates. And then, because there's so much swelling, because there's so much inflammation, we want some garbage trucks. We want some garbage workers to come kind of clean out the gunk and keep that construction site really clean. And that's going to come from your antioxidants and your anti-inflammatory fats. So what I mean is your fruits, your vegetables, your healthy fats. As for hoping to help that muscle stick around, we know that the majority of muscle loss is going to happen in the first 2 weeks after surgery, which usually is when it's hardest to eat. So that's why we kind of need to focus on that right now. And we know that the signal to send to your muscles of, hey, build, stick around, grow, whatever, it's cut in half after a surgery. And again, something that can send that signal and help you out is eating enough calories. The big question I get all the time, how much should I be eating right now, Emily? And the kind of sciencey answer to this is your resting metabolic rate, or the amount of calories that your body is going to use if you're just laying around watching Netflix all day doing nothing, will increase by 20% ish after surgery. And for most people, this pretty much makes up for the loss of activity that you're doing. So the really kind of easy answer is the amount of calories you need is probably about the same as the amount of calories you were doing before. You could also try this calculation to give yourself a ballpark number. Now, calculations are guesses, but for the majority of athletes that I work with, this is getting us in a pretty close range, and I like this calculation. Also, keep in mind the factors like walking on crutches uses 3 times more energy than just normal walking around. So again, even though it really doesn't feel like it, your body is using a lot of energy right now, and you need to provide it. Okay, so we talked about the construction site, and that, specific macronutrients are important. But let's talk about 5 specific foods that I want you to try to include right now, and then I'm going to give you some examples. Number 1 is protein. Again, we saw this coming. We're probably trying to aim for at least 80% of our body weight in pounds in protein. If you want to aim for 100% and you think that's manageable, absolutely, that's totally fine. But specifically, I need you to focus on the amino acid leucine. And when I say that that signal to your muscle, the signal telling your muscle to build has gone down, but food can fight it, leucine specifically is that fighter for you. Leucine can give that direct signal to your muscle, hey, stay around. We don't want this quad or whatever to disappear. It's also really, really important that we can send this signal to our body in the best way that we know how. And just if you ate a ton of, protein or leucine, you don't necessarily get a higher signal that lasts longer. So if you're only eating one meal a day, you're only sending that signal to your muscle one time a day. Research tells us that ideally, we're going to eat a leucine containing source of protein every 4 hours. That's the goal. Now, you probably are feeling a little bit overwhelmed, especially if you're nauseous or whatever. That doesn't mean, you have to be perfect at that goal, but that is the goal. Next, I want you to think of antioxidants as your pain and swelling SWAT team. Again, our construction site, they can be the garbage workers. They can come in and fight that swelling, that inflammation, whatever analogy that you want for this, they are important. And your antioxidants are going to come from your fruits, your vegetables, and your anti-inflammatory fats. Specifically, berries, cherries, pineapple, dark leafy greens are a really great one. Citrus would be something that's nice to include. And then those healthy fats like avocado, olive oil, avocado oil. Please don't just drink olive oil straight up. I've had so many athletes tell me that they're doing that. Maybe drizzle it on top of veggies or whatever if you're struggling to get extra calories in. But please don't just take a shot of olive oil. You could also do things like nuts and seeds. Salmon and tuna is a really, really fantastic one. Chia seeds. Fiber is important. Now, we can all kind of think of fiber as something that gets things going. It helps you poop, which for some of you might be very important right now. Maybe important tip, if you have gone more than 4 days, 5 days without having some movement, it's time to call your doctor. It's time to bring some medicine in to help move things along. So yes, fiber and water will help keep things regular, but I also think more importantly, fiber plays a really helpful role in body composition management. So if you are very nervous about gaining weight, or the term that I get asked all the time is like getting flabby, whatever. However you want to describe it, fiber is really, really helpful. Ideally, at every meal, you're including carbs. Again, if you have that construction site, your carbohydrates are your workers that are going to help you put everything together. And, if we can focus on whole grain carbs so that we're kind of killing two birds with one stone and getting our fiber and our carbohydrates in, that's great. So things like oats, things like beans, chickpeas, lentils, veggies, of course, fruit, all great things to include right now. Now, here's the point where you say, okay, cool, you've just listed off a grocery list. Now, how do I actually put it together, especially when I have no energy? Maybe I only have 3 working limbs right now, so it's weird to cook and I don't really want to eat and I'm nauseous. What are some ideas? Okay, let me give you some ideas. Number 1, let's start with a Greek yogurt bowl with granola, walnuts, and berries. This is going to give you some protein. This is room temperature, which is usually helpful if you're feeling kind of nauseous. Granola is going to give you a little bit of fiber. It's going to give you some carbohydrates. Walnuts are going to give you some of those healthy fats. And berries are going to give you some of those antioxidants. So that's a pretty easy one that you can put together with one hand. Another one, we could do a bowl of oatmeal with some protein powder, maybe some chocolate chips in there, a banana, maybe some chia seeds. So again, we've got some carbohydrates, we've got some fiber. We're doing an easy way to add in some protein. Maybe we're satisfying our sweet tooth a little bit with the chocolate chips. We're getting some fruit in there and we're getting some healthy fats in there. Another easy one, if you're not feeling too great, would be something like soup, but make sure you're getting enough protein with it. So maybe buy a rotisserie chicken and add some of that in there as well. It's a nice thing. Again, if you're just not feeling too well and you're going to be watching Netflix for the next 4 hours, grab a bowl of soup to have with you. Or maybe number 4, if you're going to be watching Netflix for the next couple hours, grab some chips, or maybe make a little bit of a burrito, put some beans in it, put some guacamole in it. We're getting some carbs, we're getting some fiber, Not a ton of protein on this one, but it's a pretty easy one. We're getting healthy fat with the avocado and the guacamole. And then fun fact, if you add some salsa, a quarter cup of salsa counts as a veggie. So we're getting veggies in there too. We're getting those antioxidants in. If you are feeling adventurous and you do want to get a little bit more protein with this kind of couch snack, then one of my favorite things to do is mix salsa and cottage cheese. And every time I make this recommendation, everybody looks at me like, oh my gosh. But I promise you, it's actually really, really nice. You know, you can play with the ratio of salsa to cottage cheese, do a little bit more salsa if you're feeling a little bit nervous, but the textures actually go really well together, and it's nice to have it as a dip with some chips. And then maybe when we start to get a little bit of an appetite back, we start to be able to withstand like some more flavors and some more temperature and stronger smells. A really, really easy option would be to go grab like a frozen salmon fillet and a salad kit. Make sure we're also getting some form of carbohydrate here as well. So maybe we're having fruit, maybe later we're having more chips so that we're at least getting there somewhere in our day. Maybe the chips with the salsa and the cottage cheese. But again, you know, don't be scared to let yourself have the easy option. People always ask me, and maybe this is my number one question more than how much should I be eating. People ask me what foods they should be avoiding. And I really, really like to operate on things that are helpful to add instead of things that are easy to take out. One, when we focus on what we can add, we kind of find that balance naturally by focusing, you know, if we have that salsa and cottage cheese in our snack, then we're not having whatever snack may or may not be on this list of foods to avoid, right? We find that balance by that. But also, you're going through a really tough time right now. Life is not fun after a surgery when you're sitting on a couch and you're, you know, whatever emotions are coming with that, whether it's that fear of how your body's going to change, that fear of will you ever get back to playing your sport, that boredom that comes on hour 10 of Netflix, or that loneliness that can come from being away from your team. And a lot of times food cravings come with all of those feelings, and it is totally okay to lean into that a little bit. It's not allowed to be your only tool that you can lean into. You also have to talk to people. You also maybe have to journal. You also have to whatever other things help you work through that. But I am fully on board that food can be used emotionally sometimes, and that's okay. So I'm not going to give you a list of foods to avoid. Sorry, focus on the foods to add. If you would like some more tips on what to do when you're feeling nauseous, what to do when you have absolutely no appetite, if you're tired, if you're constipated, if you're in pain, things like that, that can come post-surgery. In the show notes link, I have added the post-op survival guide, which has all sorts of stuff to help you with that. But what I will say here is, yeah, there's a lot of obstacles that can come in the way of the things that I'm telling you, you quote unquote should do versus what you're actually going to do. And that's okay. That's life. I don't expect this to be perfect. So be kind to yourself in this process. In conclusion, what are the most important things that I want you to remember here? Number one, the best thing you can do for yourself right now is eat enough. The second best thing that you can do for yourself is get a protein source that contains leucine roughly every 4 hours. And then the third thing is getting plenty of fruits and veggies and whole grains. If you want me to look at your situation specifically, you want to come up with a plan with me that feels really, really easy for you to do, then book a one-on-one with me. That link is in the show notes. And as you enter this journey, make sure that you subscribe to this, make sure that you're on the newsletter list so that you can continue to get these tips in your inbox as you go. Last but not least, let's fill this comment section with recommendations. We all know the first couple weeks after a surgery can be brutally boring. So what movies got you through? What shows got you through? What books? What podcasts? Maybe you took up knitting and you found a YouTube channel that was really helpful for that. Let us know.